dollars per meg in the same model because we grow a lot. But the main discussion arrives to the model in Buenos Aires, which we are now almost 70 members, and the issue is that the size of the port where we are connected grows. So at the beginning, everyone has a 10 meg port, then a 100 meg port, then they requires 1 gig port. Now, everyone is requiring 10 gig ports. So we need to cover the cost to grow in our switches and to find a way to support switches with more 10 gig ports. The reality right now we are facing in these days, is that we are under requirement of 30 10 gig ports, and our switches don't have it. So we need to buy or to find other switches. Sometimes ISOC donates, sometimes other companies or projects donate to us switches, but switches with this amount of 10 gig port are very high price. So with sorry,
you're looking at me.
Yeah, I'm passing my yes, and but we are doing a big success because as a non-profit association, we have a transparent model to cover the cost, and everyone is accepting the model to pay the percentage of the cost that they need. So up to now, we are fine with the model and trying to think how to evolve to the new species.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Please, Michael.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Malcolm Hutty, and I'm from Links, the London Internet Exchange. The London Internet Exchange, obviously, is not an exchange in the developing. Sorry, can you hear? Is clearly not an exchange in the developing world, but in terms of sustainability, we are, I believe, entirely sustainable. We have reached a point. We've gone through that leveling up process. Just a few basic facts about Links to show that. We were founded by 7 internet service providers in 1994 who wished to provide a local means for exchanging traffic so as to avoid what was then going on, where traffic between internet providers in London was passing via New York. This is essentially a very common or standard reason why internet exchanges get founded everywhere, and it was the same with us too. But that was back in 1994, so we're now 21 years old. We now have over 650 members. They have over 14 terabits per second of connected capacity and passing over 3 terabits per second of peak traffic. We have those members, those 650 plus members, come from nearly 70 countries. And in terms of scaling up through the ports, we have now got to the point where we give a port on each of our peering lands included with our membership fee at the 1 gig per second rate. And we have over 800 member-facing 10 gig ports and over 60 member-facing 100 gig ports. Over the course of the next year to 18 months, we expect 100 gig ports to be become the most popular port that we are supplying to our members. Clearly to support that, we have to have professionalized the organization. We have an organization with a little over 50 staff, and a turnover of between, I'll state it in US dollars, between 20 and 25 million US dollars per year. This is achieved through charging a small membership fee to each member and paying per port prices. So if you have one small port, you pay one small amount for that, and then if you go up to the very expensive ones, you pay different prices for that. So everyone is paying according to the cost that we're doing. Now, in terms of how you get to that level of sustainability, our view is that there are certain principles that we have held to that have really allowed us to go through that and to build the support and trust from our membership base that allows them to have confidence in us as an organisation that they want to invest in. We are a membership-based organisation. That we know that there are other internet exchanges in the world that are not based in membership, and some of them are successful, but our view is that for a internet exchange to become large and well trusted, the most likely model to achieve that success is a membership-based model, and one that cleaves to certain core values. Now, we have always had these core values at the heart of the way that we have run and developed links, and they've been our guiding principles as we have grown and as we have moved through changes in the way that we organize ourselves internally, in our management and level of professionalism. But we don't believe that it is necessary to become, we believe it is necessary to become commercially minded, but we do not believe it is necessary to become for profit in order to achieve a sustainable internet exchange that is responsive to its member community. We are not a for-profit organisation. We are organised as a membership organisation on a mutual basis. So the core values that we have found that have guided us through the process, that has allowed us to maintain a membership-based organisation that is responsive to members, while achieving that level of scaling up and professionalism, are the principles of mutuality, neutrality, openness, transparency, and a commitment to excellence in all things, in particular to technical excellence in delivery. So for mutuality, our organisation is based on the principle that there is an equal say for all members. Something that is easy to do when you're small and you just have a handful of members discussing amongst themselves what they should do. As you move through scaling up, you need to put in place more formal processes to ensure that that principle is sustained. We believe that this is extremely important to maintain the confidence of the participation base that this is an organisation that you want to build upon and to come to rely upon. So we have a board that is elected from our membership. The board is elected on the principle of one member, one vote. No matter how big or small you are, no matter how much money you pay for ports, the links, you get one vote in the election of the board. And we also have a high degree of member participation for a company of our size in the operations, such as approving the budget and strategic plans and things like that. It is true that as we have grown and as we have professionalised, the level of formality in that has changed. But we still submit all core decisions and fundamental decisions to our membership for approval. The second major principle is one of neutrality. That is, we treat all members equally. We don't play favourites. You can't get a special discount at links because you're really important. They've tried, believe me. Yeah, we've had, they only remain nameless, but we've had networks that have come to us. I try not to look at anyone in the room. We've had networks that have come to us and said, it's more important to you that we are a participant on your exchange than the fees that we pay you in port fees. So we want free service from you. And we've said, yes, actually it is. You're a really good and valuable exchange with really important prefixes that would be a great value to our members. But you're not more important than the principle of neutrality. The principle that we treat all our members equally, that we do not play favourites, is fundamentally core to achieving the confidence and maintaining the confidence that allows major businesses to place a core trust in the exchange as a critical service to them, and we will not give that up for anything. And so even very large and very important networks have been told, if you're not willing to play by these rules, fine, you don't have to join. And usually they go, sometimes they accept that, sometimes they go away for a couple of years and come back later. But those principles we cleave to with absolute conviction. Similarly, openness. This is the one principle that links did not always have. At the beginning, when we were first founded, there was a notion that the internet exchange is for proper ISPs, and people that ought to be customers should be excluded. And at the time, that meant things. It wasn't entirely clear what that really meant, but there was certainly a sense amongst some that this meant you must have your own international transit capacity, particularly to the United States. Well, over time, that became unsustainable. It was a way of excluding content providers from joining the exchange, and we have come to the realization that internet exchanges, most of all, provide the ability to connect eyeballs and content together. And so it was around 2000, there was a couple of real splits on point of principle, and one of them was the principle of openness. And now we have the principle that anyone can join the IX. They have to join on the same terms, they have to join on the same contract, and they have to be capable of peering traffic at the exchange, and must actually peer traffic with at least one other person. Not with any particular number, but with at least one other person. So in practice, this means certain technical requirements, like you've got to have an AS autonomous network. But essentially, technical requirements, no commercial favoritism. Openness. Transparency. As I say, we want to ensure that our members, we are here to serve our members, and we want to ensure that our members are able to be satisfied that we are continuing to serve them, and that they are able to participate in our decision making and our core strategic decision making. And that means fundamentally a principle of transparency. If that doesn't, clearly there are things that are confidential, like particular staff issues and so forth, but fundamentally it links. Our principle is that if there's any reason why a member should want to know it, there needs to be a reason why they can't know it for us to withhold it. If the default position is always to be transparent, to explain what's going on, to explain even the detail, precisely what we're doing wrong when we've got a problem, so that they can see it and they can provide input. Always transparency first, unless there's a really good reason why it can't happen. And of course, the commitment to excellence, always seeking to improve, always seeking to achieve a better technical delivery and a better service to members. Now, we believe that if you follow these principles, you can win the trust and confidence of even the largest organizations, even to critically depend on you as part of their core requirements. And that has been our experience. As I say, we're a membership organization, so we operate, just as Ariel was saying, on a cost recovery basis. That doesn't mean particularly month to month, literally, but because we have to have the ability to financially plan. But any surplus that we make is reinvested in the growth of the exchange, and any surplus that is beyond that is not necessary, is returned to the members not in the form of some form of dividend or so forth, but in the form of price cuts. We use any additional surplus to allow us to cut our prices further, which builds a sustainable virtuous cycle of making it easier for new members to join the exchange by cutting prices, which then stimulates demand, which then provides further revenues that can then be used to invest in and grow the exchange through the challenges of new technologies and new levels of investment that are needed, whether that's scaling up in ports or in terms of changes in the technical architecture that are needed to operate an exchange of this scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to apologize again with Bastian and ask to please get the mic.
Yes, thank you. No, you don't have to apologize. You know, I'm happy to be here and honored even. So thank you very much for that. My name is Bastiaan Goslings, here on behalf of AMSIX, the Amsterdam Internet Exchange. I'd first like to briefly describe what AMSIX stands for, what it does, and some of its characteristics and values. Then I'd like to touch upon a broader context the IXP is a part of, what we call the so-called digital infrastructure. And then I might want to make some comments about profit versus non-profit IXPs. I was asked to do so. And finish off with a suggestion how we can possibly help IXPs in developing countries. So with regard to AMSIX, the Amsterdam Internet Exchange, it facilitates the interconnection between autonomous systems, the independently run networks that make up the internet. The internet we know as a network of networks, these autonomous systems together. AMSIX does so in the Amsterdam metro area in the Netherlands. And although distributed over 11 co-locations now, 11 data centers in the Amsterdam area, and being a highly complex, highly resilient, redundant and scalable infrastructure, the functionality of the platform is basically an Ethernet switch. So the idea is that with one physical interconnection, and a physical interconnection might be redundant, but as a concept, one physical interconnection to this platform, a network can connect to it and potentially exchange traffic with all the other networks on the same platform. By now, there are 750 of those networks on the Amsterdam platform. And you can think of ISPs, content providers, the large social media providers, CDNs, cloud hosting providers, etc. I'm saying potentially exchanging traffic because between the networks, it happens on a voluntary basis. Voluntary basis based on considerations as to whether it's beneficial for the parties involved to actually exchange traffic with each other. And this is mostly in terms of whether it's commercial interesting for them to do so. I think the origins of AMSIX go back maybe comparable to Azulink, so it's more than 20 years now. We've seen significant growth over those years, and I think by now we can safely say that AMSIX is a very, very important part of underlying technical internet infrastructure. Exchange traffic peaks at more than 4 terabits per second. We are at the heart of one of the largest internet hubs, global internet hubs, a densely interconnected ecosystem of data centers, carriers, and hundreds of networks and customers there gathered to do business online with each other. At the time, that's more than 20 years ago, AMSIX actually started classically as an endeavor to keep local traffic local and to avoid the tromboning effect of IP traffic going to the US and then coming back to Holland in this case to be handed over to the destination network. At the time, 20 networks got together and set up the AMSIX Association. The management of the IXP was done by the academic network, and the day-to-day technical operations were in the hands of the university data center. A couple of years after that, in terms of professionalizing the organization, we had in the meantime set up the AMSIX company, a limited organization. The technical operations were incorporated in the company, and from then we had our own staff and our own professional NOC was formed. Maybe interesting to learn that when AMSIX was set up, the incumbent, the Dutch incumbent KPN, was actually quite supportive of the idea of setting up this exchange. Or at least let me put it this way, they were not obstructing it. And I think in hindsight that they had whether they actually knew themselves or not, we tend to say they do, but whether that was the case, I don't know. But they were really right to do so because they managed to sell a lot of connectivity towards the exchange, and appearing at the exchange themselves brought them a lot of benefits too. So I guess you could argue that a smaller piece of the pie, I think the incumbent ended up with losing some of the market share that they traditionally had. It doesn't really matter if the pie itself grows considerably. So at the end of the day, the result was that everyone was better off, including the incumbent. So that might be an interesting note to make. Well, considering the role of AMSIX now, there's a very important international aspect to it. You can probably imagine that the Netherlands is a very small country with a very small home market. Being one of the largest internet hubs in the world, by now more than 80% of the networks that use our services come from abroad, and they come specifically to Amsterdam to do online business with each other in Amsterdam. I recognize that because of the size of the Netherlands, we do not run into the challenge of needing to set up additional local IXPs in remote and lesser interconnected areas, as Antonio described, in what is the situation in Brazil, to cater for local ASs. So I look forward to hear more about that, and if I can add to that discussion, I would be happy to. So again, M6 is a facilitator. It's a neutral interconnect platform. M6 has no insight whatsoever into the actual content of the traffic that is exchanged via its platform, nor is it involved or has any insight in the commercial considerations between the networks that decide to peer with each other or who decide not to peer with each other via our platform. Basically, anyone can join. I think maybe probably comparable to the situation at Links. It's just a number of technical criteria we have. And then whether you are an ISP or a non-profit governmental organization or an academic network or a hoster, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have an AS number, and that is basically it. And then anyone can join and voluntarily interconnect to each other via the M6 switching platform. Independency, neutrality, and therefore, at least from our perspective, trust are essential for the customers of our platform. These customers are often each other's competitors. So creating this environment gives them the feeling that, okay, indeed, there is benefit for us, to do business together with us, and there is no third party in between that actually interferes with this. So some of the M6 values and characteristics, as I mentioned, it's an association, it's a non-profit organization. But in the M6 case, it's not an industry body representing its members and customers. It's not an ISP association. M6 is neutral with regard to its customers. Every customer is equal. With regard to its suppliers, as well as with regard to the content of traffic exchange via the platform, we are completely independent. It's for the members, by the members, a trusted facilitator. And at the same time, there's a strong focus on resilience, redundancy, continuity of service with regard to the platform itself, which also indirectly implies that backup connectivity for networks that connect to our platform, maybe at other exchanges or private interconnects, or maybe in other ways, that is the responsibility of those networks. So that's not something we are involved in. We can suggest to networks to interconnect to our platform redundantly at different housing sites. We can suggest to them to connect to another exchange as well for backup and resilience purposes, but that is their own responsibility. And the last thing I want to mention, mentioned by Links as well, that M6 is completely transparent with regard to its operations. As referred to in the background document to this session, from our perspective, the challenge of involving ASs to use IXPs can be left to the market. But that does not mean to say that one cannot try to influence this. Capacity building, education, as well as creating trust are not only important, they're essential. But in the Dutch case, I think it's you can see different market offerings can take on this challenge. Considering the role of M6, over the year we have been focusing more at the international, well-established players. We have another important internet exchange in the Netherlands, NL-IX, you might have heard of, that was set up to cater more towards the smaller Dutch networks. And basically offering them a one-stop shop. So not only offering the interconnection facility at the exchange, but also, if applicable, arrange an AS number for the networks, IP address space, provide them with BGP courses, act as a knowledge base. I think that was a nice way in the Dutch context that the market approached this particular challenge. From a regulatory angle, when it comes to IXPs, I think the main thing policymakers or governments can do in terms of intervening is to remove regulatory barriers for an IXP's creation. In the Dutch case, this did not happen because there were no barriers. Until today, exchange points are still not regulated by any form of government policy. Obviously, as a company, M6, operating in the Netherlands, we abide by the law, we pay our taxes, but there has been no interference whatsoever with the running of the IXP itself. Legislation in a broader context towards the sector has been quite benign too over the years, which we think has been an element of the success too. Mainly focused on the economic aspects and how to support the sector in order for it to grow. Think of deregulation of the telecom sector, a focus on open markets, fair competition, and to only intervene when necessary. And then the interventions you can think of in the field of protecting the rights of end users. We have a net neutrality law in the Netherlands. Those are the moments that it might be applicable for the for government to intervene. It may be interesting to share with you that in this context, barely a month ago, in Dutch Parliament, a motion was accepted to instruct government to recognize the digital infrastructure as the third main port in Holland. So we have the harbor in Rotterdam, one of the largest in the world. We have the Schiphol International Airport. But the digital infrastructure is considered now officially the third main port. Its role is to neutrally facilitate the digital economy. So think of data centers, carriers, hosting parties, internet service providers, internet exchange points, the academic network, those type of underlying facilitating entities. The nuts and bolts of the internet, so you will. The physical part of it. For most people, actually invisible. All of it which is necessary to host, carry, and route the bits across the networks that make up the internet. I'm focusing here on this digital infrastructure. As we all know, it is a lot more than just the IXP itself that you need to reap the social and economic benefits of a well-functioning internet ecosystem. From our perspective, this entire infrastructure is the foundation on top of which the entire internet economy runs. All the services and forms of digital communications depend on it. So briefly with regard to profit versus non-profit IXPs, as I said, M6 is a non-profit entity, but certainly, most certainly, it is very profitable. Port fees we charge are based on cost price, which are partly based on prognosis of numbers of ports sold. We furthermore need to keep in mind the funding necessary to expand the platform and keep healthy reserves in case of what we would call what-if scenarios. And we include these in the port prices, these necessities. At the end of the day, when reserves are considered too high, a price cut will be suggested, and this is by default approved by the member constituency. I think interesting to learn from maybe the Japanese experience, and I hope Katsuyasu is listening remotely, and that they actually chose to set up a commercial entity to run the exchange, because Japanese ISPs and customers are very sensitive to service quality of the internet, reliability, stability, accountability, etc. And they request high quality of an IXP operation. They're not satisfied with voluntary best effort level. I think this is interesting because these elements are exactly the reason why we set up a non-profit exchange. We have no other goal than to offer a stable, continuously running, secure, scalable, and neutral switching platform for the best price. And the fact that it is non-profit and member-based guarantees from our perspective the long-term continuity of the exchange, while reducing the risk that it might be taken over by a third party. Maybe to emphasize a bit with regard to the best effort comment, M6 was the first IXP to offer a carrier-grade service level agreement as a service towards the networks that use its platform. So finally, how to help IXPs in lesser developed countries? I don't have the answer here, I must confess. As came up in other IXP-related sessions at this IGF, there is no one-size-fits-all recipe or model or best practice, so you will, for the setting up and nurturing of an IXP in order for it to become successful and sustainable. Market circumstances will differ, the geographics, cultural differences exist, and therefore also the regulatory environment, and I'm sure there are numerous other elements you would have to keep in mind. We all know it's not about the technicalities of setting up the IXP, obviously. I want to point to the fact that there is a lot of knowledge available at existing IXPs, and the lessons can be learned from them. And I want to particularly point to those interested to the IXP associations in the different regions, EuroIX, LAC-IX, AFIX, and APIX. These associations are focused at knowledge sharing, capacity building in an open, accessible manner. More importantly, this is for IXPs by IXPs themselves. So I would definitely suggest, to approach these organizations if you want to learn more about experiences and what has been learned in practice. Besides these IXPIAs, obviously there are organizations. I want to point to two of them, PCH and ISOC, who are doing tremendous work in terms of capacity building, as well as technical consultancy and education in the area of IXPs. So I will leave it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Sebastian, are you going to answer that smart look about expensive equipment now?
Okay, send me the bill. Thank you. My name is Sebastián Belagamba. I'm the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the Internet Society. I'm kind of caught in friendly fire here because I'm from Argentina, and I've been there when Ariel was describing how we set up the IXP in Argentina, but he already told, and Jane already spoke from the ISOC perspective. So I will try to manage a kind of a regional perspective, if I may. It is amazing that since these days, 1998, when we were working on the first IXP in Latin America and Argentina, now we have more than 60 IXPs in the region. The downside of that is that more than half of the 60s are located either in Argentina or Brazil. So we have a lot of work to do in other countries that are not Argentina and Brazil. Argentina and Brazil are way ahead and good service by IXPs, I would say, but many other countries in the region are not. So that's where we are focusing our work. And our work is not just our work. It's our partnership work. I would like to mention to say hi to Vevel. Hi, Vevel. Vevel from PCH. He's the Caribbean guy. With respect to IXP. So if you need anything in the Caribbean, go to him. We work a lot on helping people to set up IXPs in the region, and we consider that crucial for the good development of the internet. Many of the things that I've already said, we sign off already. About how an IXP should be. About mutuality, about neutrality, etc. But I would like to go into some other details. You mentioned, Bastian, about the technicalities being the less, not the most important part of setting up an IXP, and I agree completely. There is a phrase around that setting up an IXP is about 80% social engineering and 20% technicalities. I don't know who started that phrase, but it's good. And there is some discussions about who was the first one to say that, but let's take it as an anonymous phrase and quote it like that. But I think it's completely true. The work in setting up a scenario in order to guys to sit down on the table in order to start thinking of setting up an IXP is the most intensive part of the work and extensive part of the work of setting up an IXP. Once you reach agreements on several key topics, the technicalities are there. And we all know how to set up an IXP from a technical standpoint. But what has to be done is it's in the process of this social engineering to make some important decisions as regards to how you manage your IXP and how you imagine your future. For what I see in the field, there is, I would say, 4 different types of IXPs, and none of them are better than the other, but they all kind of work somewhere and don't work in some other places. We have these non-for-profit industry associations of IXPs that started some of the IXPs in the region and in the case in Europe too. Operate on neutral commercial and for-profit companies. I would say we have a couple of successful ones. Curaçao is one in this category. University and governmental agencies. There's cases. I remember now for instance, the University of Costa Rica, who manages the local IXP successfully too. I fail to think of a successful governmental IXP, but okay, I might go and find out if there is a good example of that. And there's some informal association of networks too. I mean, not so formal. I mean, don't take any formality. Just they start exchanging traffic. There's also here in the region, among these 60-something IXPs, a couple of them, I wouldn't name names, but that are, I would say, a funny IXP. I mean, it's the local incumbent and dominant company set up a private club of gentlemen among friends, which, yeah, you are not, I mean, they have veto power in order who can get into the club, and they call that an IXP. So we're working in some countries to have an alternative IXP to this kind of IXPs that we have to count among these 60s. I would say that among the decisions that have to be made when we start thinking of setting up a successful IXP, it's about the staff. I mean, how you staff your IXP. At the beginning, as Ariel was saying, I think most of the time is volunteer work by the members. But that doesn't last well in the future. I mean, you have to get into the professional stuff as soon as you can. But that's a decision. Some other IXPs have started with professional dedicated staff from the very beginning, like here in Brazil, for instance. I mean, it's a decision that you have to make, and that will repercute into the sustainability in the future. Either you set up a non-for-profit or a for-profit organization is something that you have to decide at the beginning. About the ownership model of the IXP, I think is very important. Is it going to be a cooperative, or is it going to be owned by a third party? And that's something that has to be discussed and settled. Most importantly, where the IXP is going to be hosted. The neutrality of the place that you decide to host the IXP is crucial for the future of the IXP in our perspective. Which cost recovery methods are going to be used? I mean, I remember the story in Cavase, but we have to change in Argentina several times the cost recovery model because some produce some kind of inequalities and the other produces different inequalities. There is no such thing as the perfect model, but you have to choose between the different models. Is it going to be a layer 2, layer 2, 3 IXP? I mean, that's a good question. Starting over with a layer 2. Layer 2 is, I'm not a technical myself, I'm a political scientist, but I learned that a layer 2 is, you have one router and everyone connects to one router. Layer 3 is when every single person that is connecting to the IXP brings their own router and they connect in a switch or something like that. There's positive and negative things. I mean, starting layer 2 is much more cheaper and faster, but the decisions you can make, I mean, are not that. I mean, your hands are a bit tied in order to how you set up your own policies. In the other scenario, is more complicated from a technical standpoint, but you have more power on your decisions. And something that I didn't went into the details, but we learned in Argentina the hard way. If you go for what is called a mandatory multilateral peering agreement or bilateral agreements. I mean, a mandatory multilateral peering agreement is something that everyone that's connected to the IXP should exchange traffic with everyone else in the IXP mandatorily. That's the way we started in Argentina, and I would say I was the president of the Cavase, the trade association in Argentina, who runs the IXP before Ariel, and it basically exploded. I mean, it didn't work. We had a big crisis. Argentina, for a period of 6 months, was split in two. I mean, with two networks in Argentina that didn't connect to each other. I mean, I mean, I was thinking of a word that I wouldn't be seen written in the transcript, but we screwed it up. I mean, I would say big time. I mean, so it's something that you have to consider because there is highs and lows in both sides. So this is the kind of things that we see that you have to decide. A combination that is not a perfect combination in order to assure the sustainability of an IXP in the future, but it resides on the decisions you make in this question that I posed. So happy to help with more experience on how things went well or wrong in answering these questions in many places in Latin America. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And please, Nick.
Good morning. CIBR has proposed this workshop together with ISOC, and we are very glad about the level of discussions here. In fact, the best practice forum that we have this year is IGF was also, they produced a very good document. There are some paragraphs on the business models for IXPs on this document. My role here is to help to make some questions and comments about we've heard here. In fact, the experience of on Holland and London and the experience of Argentina and Brazil, there are differences, of course, between developed nations. ISPs stay in developed nations in situations like Brazil and Argentina. I would like first just to begin the question and answers, because we have some time to make here a round table, in fact, in order to receive feedback and response from the audience. I would start making some questions to Bastian and to Malcolm about their model, because as I understood, the model is based on the association fee and port fee. How they calculate this, because one thing is cover the costs, other things is to have money to invest in the next generation when we go from 10 gig sports to 100 gig sports. So most of the IXPs here are all of the IXPs here making speech are non-profit, but they act as a commercial IXP as soon as they have to reinvest the results of the operation to make the investment that is needed to grow. So I would like, as a first question, understand how those countries that has a big experience on sustainability calculate how much they need to invest on the following years. Second question, just to put to everybody, is about the role and the costs associated to the content people and CDNs. In those models in Argentina, Holland, and London, and other countries that, of course, Jen knows very well, how these participants contribute to the cost of the ISP, and somehow with the money that you could be used to investments in the future. Okay, so just put those two questions, and I hope you can have a fruitful discussion here.
Before Malcolm and Bastian answer the questions posed by Henrique, I'd like to ask Natalia to read through a comment that Mr. Katsuyasu has made for us here. Natalia, could you please go through it?
Hello. Mr. Toyama is in remote participation and has sent this message. Hello, this is Katsuyasu Toyama, working for JP NEP, the largest internet exchange in Japan. I would like to briefly explain Japanese history of IXP. The first IXP was established approximately 20 years ago. At that time, a strong motivation to make internet exchange was to improve the latency between Japanese IXPs, because some connection between Japanese IXPs were going through USA over the Pacific Ocean. Additionally, the first IXP and all other IXPs in Japan has been established by IXPs themselves in bottom-up way. Most IXPs had the same issue. Therefore, they got together to solve these issues by establishing IXPs. This means IXPs was not established by government initiatives, but collaboration of IXPs in Japan. Next, major Japanese IXPs are operated by commercial company, profit organization. Why? This is because Japanese IXPs and their customers are very sensitive to service quality of telecommunication from the perspectives such as reliability, stability, accountability, and responsibility to customers. Therefore, they were not satisfied with voluntary or best effort operation and required very high quality service to IXPs.
Thank you, Natalia. Ben, we can come back for the questions made by Henrique, and then we open the floor for other participants here in the workshop. Okay. Who'd like to go first? Malcolm, thank you.
I mean, to some extent, my answer, I guess, is not going to be terribly interesting because it's really you do proper business planning to answer these questions. As I said, we're a $20–25 million business. Any business that is operating at that scale or anything that needs to be able to sustain itself past the stage of immediately making one decision after another on a very ad hoc basis. When you get to the level of sustainability, you need ordinary business practices to plan your budget, plan your expected costs for the future, decide what the need is going to be. Now, I mean, we set ourselves the target of being a world-leading operator. That's not intended to set me up in an argument with Bastian about which of us is better on a particular thing, but it's instead intended to be a commitment to excellence, and that implies certain things. And one of the things it implies is that when our members ask us for capacity, when they ask us for a port, we can be able to provide it. We shouldn't be in a position where we're saying, I'm sorry, but we can't deliver that. Yeah? And that implies forward planning. It implies having good communications with your membership base so you understand what their needs are going to be over the coming budgeting period, and so that you can plan your capacity, and also in the longer range, plan the development of your architecture so as to ensure that you're always in a position to meet the demands that the members have. And the same is true in resilience. In resilience, our members have made it pretty clear that actually they care much more about uptime than they do about the port fees. if there ever were to be a notion that, well, if we could pay a little bit more, we would ensure that we'd eliminate so much time, we're pretty much almost without limit. They want us to be available all the time. And we strive for the very highest standards of availability. And again, in order to do that, you have to do planning for what the needs are going to be, how you're going to deliver that. And that means, you know, setting a budget, but it also means having a network design and a network architecture plan and a roadmap for the evolution and development of the network architecture. And essentially, we do all of these things, and we would expect any organization that was running a substantial network to need to do these sorts of things. The larger you get, the more complex those things are, and the more formalized the processes have to be in order to make sure that you haven't missed anything and that you've made good decisions. But fundamentally, it's a process of running a high-quality business.
Yeah, thank you. Bastian here. I don't think I have very much to add, just to confirm that it is indeed a quite complex and detailed ongoing process of capacity planning and budgetary planning. And basically, at the end of the day, it is a business case, and you combine everything, you know, the demand, the traffic growth, port growth, sales targets, etc. Everything is incorporated in there, and we have like very detailed analysis tools to look at former developments and to project in different scenarios, you know, and to an extent it is an estimated guess, but it's a continuously ongoing process. Also, you know, when you can adapt while it's ongoing, the way that you approach developments, and that is how, at the end of the day, the cost price is determined. And what I refer to, including a premium for reinvesting in the platform, as well as building up and keeping healthy reserves. But you need to confirm what Malcolm said. It is a very careful business and very professional business planning. That, at the end of the day, that's what it is. In this case, it's an exchange, but indeed, a professional organization just has to do so.
I totally agree with Malcolm and Sebastian what they said, but I want to add, in our experience, which is different because we are running 16 IXPs right now and 4 more underdeveloped. And in such way, we are always starting up because we have new ones. And plus, in our model, we have to deal with the interconnection between them. So it's in some way we, and also I want to share with you, we are in almost $600,000 yearly of budget for running this IXP, which for Argentina is a lot. But the stages where are the different IXP inside our model, for example, Buenos Aires from the rest, are very different. Buenos Aires is very big for them, has their own budget for a year, is in a different stage, and has a professional team, and has we are under discussion, as Sebastian says. And I think it's important to clarify this fight at 2004 when the incumbent said that we don't want the mandatory multi-level agreement no more, and they leave us and said, okay, we just sell to you transit IP and we will not interchange more with yours. And it was a big question, as Sebastian said, is the mandatory model, is the mandatory multilateral agreement model is good or not? And for us was like a shield to give us the possibility to still alive for a while until we decide to change our policy to be open to others, not only the ISPs, to be other members. And our traffic grows and our models grows. And when we reach this point, we do not need more the incumbents. And this was the key to success of our model. And this was the reason why we are able to open more IXP inside the countries, inside our country, because we don't need the incumbent. And I guess besides the economic problem to be sustainable, the problem of who are the members that are able to interchange traffic inside an IXP is other key issue to discuss to be success in the model.
Okay, thank you, Ariel. And then I'd like to open the floor for questions from the audience.
Hello. Hi, good morning. My name is Cito. I'm from Equinix in Brazil. And my question is actually to everybody. It's, let's say we plan to build an IX where there is already an IX in place. What happens with the market? Is there room for more than one IX in a particular region or city? How do you think, or what do you think that will happen in the near future or in the future, the long term?
I think they might be in the future. I think, but you have to starting. I mean, with one. And many, in Latin America, in many countries, as I said, I mean, I was just making the math. I mean, out of 60 something, 40 are in Argentina and Brazil. So we have 30 something economies, including the Caribbean in the region. So many countries are not served, and many countries are underserved. So for the starter, I think you have to start with one. I mean, starting with two would be nonsense. But in the midterm or long term, I see no problem in having more than IXP. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, because they will cater to different needs and different markets. And as the traffic grows, then the need for more inter-exchange will grow too.
In fact, in New York are more than one, in other big cities are more than one, so, but depends on the market and the model. Yeah.
Well, sorry, can I? As I am the other IXP in the city, my answer is not to be very trustful. But in the past, we saw situations where we had 2 or more ISPs. Then we had a set of autonomous systems in one of them and another set of autonomous systems in the other one. So the traffic was divided. And if one ISP wanted to peering with all the others, he would have to connect to the 2 IXPs. So they would have to pay more for that. So it would end with high costs for the participants of both IXPs in the medium or long term. But I don't know if I have to be trusted in this answer.
I would ask why you were thinking of having a second IXP in the same location. If your reasons are good, then it will work, and if they're not, then it's unlikely to. In London, there are more than one IXP. There have been other IXPs that have been started to run alongside or in competition with links, depending on how you wish to describe it. And one of them has succeeded, and others of them have failed. And I would put that down to the reasons why they chose to start them. The one that succeeded was founded because we certainly at the time, we had quite high prices. And as we've grown, we've been able to cut our costs significantly, the prices to join significantly. But at the time, we had quite high prices, and we were aiming to operate always. We've always been aiming to operate on a highly professional basis. Now, as you know, there are some other models which are more sort of volunteer-based, donated equipment, volunteer time, no sort of staff, professional staff and so forth. Now that's a model that gives you a lower cost base and enables you to have essentially no prices. But it has other restrictions in terms of its ability to grow, and also in terms of the service that it can give, and sometimes that can have an impact on uptime as well. So essentially, those two models were meeting different markets, and we had different some members that prized high reliability and the ability to scale capacity, and then there were other small networks that really thought the most important thing for them is that it doesn't cost anything. And so those two exchanges grew. Now the exchange that's done that now does have some form of fees because it's grown and it's got to a stage where it needs to do that, but it's still been aimed at something else. Other exchanges that were started in London were started on the basis that, oh, this looks like a good business. We could start this and make lots of money. We could be profitable here. Now that's not based on a goal of serving the members, serving the participants. That's based on the selfish goal of being able to take something out. They didn't succeed. Beyond that, I'd say that clearly there is overlap between markets of IXPs that are served. I can't remember off the top of my head quite what the overlap in membership is between the membership of Links and the membership of the Amsterdam Internet Exchange, but it's a substantial overlap. Probably, over 20%, maybe 30% or more of of networks that are members of both those exchanges. So in one sense, you could say, you have two exchanges there that are serving the same market and so forth, but there is differences. Clearly, Amsterdam and London are not the same place, and there's good reasons why you might want both, and there are a number of them. Some of them will be about location and accessibility relative to your network, not in absolute terms. One thing that members will get from being members of both exchanges is the further resilience of knowing that there's two separate ones, and they're technically and organisationally separate. So that kind of argument could apply also to the question that you're asking. If that's the driving factor, but really the question is, why are you doing it? And if you're offering those sorts of answers as an answer, is that just what you as the person considering setting it up thinks, or is it that an opinion that is shared by those that you are expecting to participate? If the people that you are expecting to participate believe in those reasons and want it to happen, then you're likely to be successful. If you just think, well, I want to make a business here and I can claim that, then unless you can bring the networks along that you wish to participate, you may find it difficult. Thank you.
Just to highlight a point that Sebastian raised about developing countries and emerging markets, a small market. We've seen this happen in countries like Ghana, where there were two IXs that started and both were close to failing. They joined forces because it was a much better, as everyone has said, business model, excellence for the customers, technical capacity. They used one as a redundant facility and one as the main switching facility. Obviously, the other was a switching facility too, but it gave them a redundant POP. It's important to think about why, as Malcolm said, why you're doing what you're doing, because you could just kill off a really good model in general in a small place. I think Costa Rica would be another place like that, where you've got to build up that business and build up the content that's coming into the country and the attractiveness of the market. So it's a serious business question, but also you could be doing more harm than good. Just a thought.
Thank you. Well, do we have another question for from the audience?
Sorry. It's not a question, it's just, comment that I wanted to make. It was already mentioned, the best practice forum that we have had this year at the IGF on IXPs. You already heard that, I mean, I've also found it a great document. I mean, I have been working on it as a consultant for the IGF Secretariat. The fact that it's so great is because we have been working with, and I could count on the support and input of a lot of great people. But the 2 points I wanted to make here is not into the content of the document, but just the idea of the best practice forum itself. I think as a personal component, that is a great acknowledgement and recognition of the fact that the knowledge on how to run an IXP, how to set up an IXP, is available in the community. And I think that's a great recognition also by the wider community, because otherwise there would never have been a team as IXPs being accepted as a best practice forum. So that's the first point. And the second point is the outcome document. I mean, it's still till the end of the week, so you still have 1 day online to give additional input. So the final document will be published as an outcome document by the IGF. And I think that might also be important, although, as I mentioned, I have been receiving a lot of comment, a lot of input from Internet Society, IX Federation, PCH. But the outcome document is not a document of one of the 3 organizations. No, it's something else. And it might be interesting, it might be good to have that IGF logo there, to have also that United Nations logo there. It might help to reach out to other people, to people that you don't reach normally with the other documents. So I think it's very useful in those 2. And I hope that, well, we had a great document this year, that we can continue the work and also produce another document to follow up next year. Thanks.
Thank you. We have one final question at the back, and then we go for the final comments, all right? It's okay. It's finished. Okay. So, would like to make the final comments, panelists. It's all right.
So I'd like to thank you, all of you, to be here, and all of you also to participate. And that's it. Thank you.